Welcome to Innsbruck, Eagles, Austria, and the doubles first run. 2 runs back-to-back to decide this first World Cup of the Luge season. And this is what it's like on board. Shake, rattle and roll is a bit what it feels like. You start on the doubles from coming into corner 5. It's far higher in the men's. Coming down through the bottom, you have a very quick, tight labyrinth. We actually was trying to figure out where we were in the track as we joined that. It was probably about halfway down. There's a big Kreisel corkscrew halfway down, corner 7, which the track doubles back in itself, big 2 pressures. Now we're looking at the start list, and it will be the Czech team who kick us off, and it's done on Nations Cup qualifiers to begin with before we get through to the top men. Vendel and Alt, Eggert and Benneken are undoubtedly the top 2 pairs in the world, finishing first and second in the overall World Cup standings last year, as the Germans did in the women's as well. So again, they start with a new clean slate, all teams. The Germans, I hear, though, are in tremendous form. But, so too a few other teams. It's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. Now, let's have a look at the first getaway by Kavala and Kudera. As per the women, they join at corner 5, 6, and down into 7 here, the Kreisel. It's only about 270 degrees, so it's a 2-pressure corner. Twice the G-force comes on heavy and you have to steer through it, and then the rest of these all single-pressure corners. Coming around out of 10, and this is where the track really drops away and speeds up enormously through the labyrinth. Right, left, right again, and through the bottom corner again. Massive G-forces. You come back up the hill and over the finish line. 40.615 for the Czechs. And it is very sunny here. It's about +2.5, the ice about -2.5, so the cooling system doing a solid job of keeping it pretty crispy and cold. There are a lot of shades up, and you'll see there's occasionally a bit of an obscured view, especially on corner 14 that really gets a lot of sun. They do build these tracks on the northerly part of the mountain, northerly facing, so less sun to hit it all day, but still, as the day goes on, and it is so beautifully sunny here today, it does start to affect the ice if the cooling system isn't really cranked up. Varcek and Zimic are next to down the hill. Well, that was a solid start there by them. Powerful pair. The front man doing most of the power pulling. Indeed, probably an 80-20 split of driving as well, maybe even 90-10, and probably about 60-40 in terms of the pulling power. Whoa, that's a very messy entrance into 10, and it's still quite flat there, so they've lost a lot of speed, 106.9. And they go behind, it turns red, and we'll keep going behind, maybe even 4/10, 5/10. No, not that bad, actually. The track is short enough that they weren't punished too badly. It's only about 900 meters of ice here. It's, if not the shortest track, perhaps Oberhof would be shorter from the doubles start, though this ends quicker. It's that bit faster. And that's what happens when you try and steer on a straight. Without the G-force of the corner, which is where they recovered their position, where the runners are digging into the ice much better, and you can get a better steer. You start steering on the flat, well, it's so easy to not really have any reaction from the ice, and then suddenly you start steering more and more, and it bites, it kicks in. And well, if anyone's ever aquaplaned before in a car, and then suddenly the steering bites in, and perhaps they haven't done the right thing and just relaxed on the steering, it can really bite in hard, and it's that's exactly what happens. Anyway, Gruber and Keinswaldner of Italy coming down the hill next as we go through the placings of the Nations Cup. It's a one-run race on Friday for those who were not inside the top 12, seeded by last year's results. So these men all desperate to get into the World Cup, and they have done. The first 12 sleds to come down today. And by a third of a second, the Italian pairing, who are pretty experienced and should be going into the lead, are indeed going into the lead by some margin. Though that was a funny old line. Oh my goodness, the punishment came after the finish line. And Tartaglia, I think like the rest of us, are wondering whether they got smacked about there. Not too badly, hopefully. Dead leg, perhaps. The ice is just not as well looked after the finish line, and it's just little bumps and lumps, and you can really take a smack off the wall. That's a whole lot worse than coming down and taking a hit off the wall where oh my goodness me, did they pop up into the air there? Goodness, hard to see. It was a bit burnt out on the camera there. It's tricky for these cameramen to go from dark to light, but poof, that would have been heart in mouth moment. There's Armin Zogler. He saw his daughter come down this morning, and in her first ever World Cup race, the head of the Italian team. It was certainly a better start than pretty much all of last season for him when he took over as head coach. Now, Solkanski and Stuchlak, second Slovakian pairing. Plenty of experience for these two now. They've been together for a number of years, so the ESP, if you like, should be there. You'll often find that cousins and brothers seem to make the best duo, though in terms of actual size and fit, you really need a much bigger man on the front to somewhat envelop the guy beneath. Just makes for better aerodynamics. Now, round through 10. Problem corner for some. Not for Zulkanski and Stuchlak, though they are still 2/10 down, but the speed is solid. And they slot themselves into second place, actually, putting back 1500s around 13 and 14. So, good end to that slide by these two. Not the best of starts, but certainly made up for it. Exit of 9. Solkanski there just had his head up at the start, spotted his entrance to 10, and then laid back and let the sled do the work. Park and Cho of Korea, well done to them for getting through the Nations Cup, and there were a lot of sleds, a huge amount of nations, more than ever before. Some 52 in the women's, which is a record, and they battled their way into the top 10 to get in to this World Cup race. Of course, with Korea hosting the Olympics at the end of the season, they've put a huge amount of effort into the sliding sports, and I'm sure they've targeted every sport, but they've really worked very hard at luge, bobsleigh and skeleton. 3/10 down at the moment, 108.3, and I'm afraid they've just overcooked just about every single corner. just oversteering a little bit everywhere. Sometimes on this track, if it looks a little wild, it can be very good. Now let's have a look at the start. And you want to be over on the right-hand side as they look at it as you exit that start house. Looked like a possible little bump there on the first wall, and that would make sense because they were suddenly quite far behind early on. 9 to 10 changeover, keeps his head up all the time there. Adel acts as a bit of a windsock, I'm afraid. So bright you can't even see whether they've got red, green or blue. Someone has to go for tech checks. And that's what that's all about. Just to make sure that in the middle of the race, everything's still as it was at the start of the race. Because there are a few setup little sneaky tricks you can pull if you know what they are. And they're, of course, illegal. So the all sleds are similar. As Krusen and Shirk, the USA, come down the hill. They had a lead from the start. That's all evens in the 8-9 changeover. Flop off the end of 9, but we saw Geisenberger do that and win the women's. So I'm not sure that's such a wicked thing to do. 109.3, the head up and the airflow massively. Oh my goodness, Krusen's almost sitting up there. Is certainly going to slow them down. Well, they've gone ahead of Gruber and Keinswaldner, so you can't criticize them too much. It was very well done. Not quite sure how they did it, seeing as the head was right up in the airflow there, but they didn't make any mistakes in their positioning. And that's 9 to 10. Nice straight line there. They got the exit of 9 right. I guess it's such a short track, really. It means a lot more, especially down the bottom there where it's pretty steep, to make sure you get your clean line as you exit a corner. It's more important than just having your head up in the airflow a little bit. That's only going to cost a small amount in terms of top-end speed. Now, Obolongchik and Zakharkiv, the Ukrainian duo. Did very well here last year in the World Championships, coming 16th, one of their best ever finishes in the World Championships. That's only 10 months ago here on this track. Eggert and Benneken won that, as well as the whole season, and Wendel and Alt, well, they came second. And it was another German duo, Goike and Gam, who took the bronze. Pops his head back there, trying to get top-end speeds as best as possible in this fairly flat section, and then down through the bottom it really gets steep. Whoa, that was clumsy into 14. You can see the ice getting kicked up. And yeah, bit of a mistake at the end, and that's pushed them down to 4th place, just ahead of Park and Cho. Now everyone starts this first run equal, but they will carry forward their time to the second run, add it together with the second run, and lowest time wins, of course. Wow, actually going sideways there. Steered too early, and luckily the ice didn't bite them, bite the runners and flip them over. Instead, they just skittered over it and lost speed. Next duo are the Broz brothers. Sound like a band from the 90s, but these two guys are Czech duo, are highly experienced, and when they're absolutely on form, I would say a top top 10 threat normally. Start there, 2.066. Not the best start we've seen so far, but how did the damen start and the women's start and double start? It's not so important here. It's almost more important to get down and tucked in early and get driving well. It's so short. Well, they are pulling this back. The speed is good. There's 800s in it, which is quite a sizable margin. But the way they're going, they might just pull this back. No, not quite. They gain another couple of hundreds and slot into second. So, yeah, good result for them. Just behind Krusen and Shirk at the moment. 8 teams down and 14 still to come. Another 4 all qualified through the Nations Cup, and then we get into the real heavyweights from last season on seeding points. Though to be fair, the best of the Nations Cup, Pence and Fischler, are absolute gold medal contenders here, and not being in the top 12 on seeding points is a bit misleading for them. So Denisiev and Antonov now for Russia. One of 2 Russian duos that qualify through the Nations Cup. Bogdanov and Medvedev were second. These guys 4th. The number 1 duo, Yushikov and Prokhorov, are seeded and also coming down later. Well, a start that saw them go behind. They managed to pull it back and go ahead of Krusen and Shirk, the Americans who currently lead, 40.231. The best downtime, and I believe that is the best speed we've seen so far, 109.9. Unlikely, therefore, to lose this lead, and they don't. 0.035. Good, solid slide. Perhaps a better start could be got by those 2. 2 paddles and down. Big heavy man in the front there, Denisiev. He's got to be a good 100 kilos plus, and that's the perfect shape and size to be the front man. Also gives them a lot of solid weight to pick up and keep momentum going down the bottom. Putin's and Marcinkiewicz, our Latvian pair, 10th down the hill. Well, they've been training away in Zagulda, their home ice. This a very different track. This is fast and furious, and no chance to make mistakes. While Zagulda is very long, looping track. Doesn't have the same kind of labyrinths that this track does. It's a totally different start. But whatever they've done in the start, it's worked. They're in the lead. Fastest start we've seen so far today, 2.031. And that lead has evaporated, and more as they round through 10. Just 26 thousandths in it, but their speed's not as good as the Russians. Highly doubtful they'll claw this back now. How far will they slip behind? 9 thousandths of a second, that's all. Ahead of the Americans, Krusen and Shirk, by about 300ths of a second. It's pretty tight at the top. Top 4 all just split by 7 or 8 hundredths of a second at the moment. Well, just how fast can you do this track? 39.468 is the track record achieved by Eggert and Benneken earlier in the year on the way to their World Championship win. quite a lot quicker is the answer. Not sure the ice is in the condition to do that. And that is always a major factor. Perhaps if it was sunny and 7 or 8 degrees colder, the ice would just be that bit harder and allow these sleds just to travel a bit quicker now. Bogdanov and Medvedev giving up a little bit to their compatriots who still lead. Let's see how much that's grown to. It's about 500ths. As they skitter about, coming from 9 into 10. Bit of frantic footwork there by Bogdanov, who's starting to bring his head up to the airflow, a little bit sideways through 13. The speed was good. I think that little slide in 13, it's cost them, it has. They were on their way to clawing it back and going into the lead there. But I'm afraid not in the end. Behind the Bros brothers. We will have Pence and Fischler next, who I'm fascinated to see how they get on. Pence and Fischler are, well, I would fair to say, pretty much sliding legends here in Austria. And on home ice can slide up a massive storm. They had a very hit-and-miss season last year. That's why they ended up down in 19th, and they're not seeded. That's why they had to battle through the Nations Cup. They missed over half of the races last year due to injury. They're not spring chickens by any stretch of the imagination, but they're going to absolutely gun this off the hill, I can tell you. They're good starters, magnificent pilots, and this is home ice. Let's see what they do. Big Pence on the front. Oh, start record, and they hold it. A little kick off the wall there. That's not exactly in the sliding manual, but a lot of what Pence and Fischler do isn't in the sliding manual. They always seem to be right on the edge of magnificent and crashing. Oh, there they go, and flop off the end of 9. That doesn't seem to be a problem at all. Still 8 thousandths in the lead, and look at the speed, 1:11.8. Surely they can't lose this. And they don't, they pull away. 0.136 in the lead. Could have been better, a bit of wall kicking and a bit of flopping off of corners, but still a typically wild and exciting ride by Pence and Fischler. Well, you can see them just adjusting themselves, trying to go over as far as they can to the right-hand side to get onto that first corner. They did well there to handle that power start. What a tremendous start it was as well. Great benchmark for the others. This Eagles Innsbruck track, run 1 of the doubles. We're just about halfway through as Ryder and Rassner of Italy take to the hill. Halfway through run 1, that is. We'll have run 2 after a half-hour break from run 1. Ryder and Rassner not as hench as Pence and Fischler, and it shows in the starts, but they've somehow managed to cut their way into the lead here by some margin as well. Goodness me, Zogler has turned up with what looks like a different team this year. The Italians are sliding very well indeed. 1:10.6. Head back, he's letting this fly. It's not as quick as Pence and Fischler, but I think, yes, quick enough to do the job. Antonio Tartaglia has been doing his work in the gym with these guys, and they all look a lot slicker. Turned up in great physical condition at the start of this Olympic campaign. Exit of 9, yes. You want to be over towards the right-hand wall as they see it. You do not want to be over towards the left, or you come very late onto 10. That means a real hard steer and a lot of ice getting hacked away in that steer, which of course slows you down. Yushakov and Provorov of Russia. Next up. Still have their just about all of their 30 seconds to get off the hill. It's at their pace. They just have to cross that first red line. There we go. Tucked down in very early, giving away 600s at the start, which would normally be the kiss of death, but I don't think so here on this track. It's such an unusual start and take on, and it was smooth, though 1500s is starting to become a gap that'll be very, very difficult to pull in. They're going to have to be hitting 111 and something to pull that in, and they're not clearly. 110.2 kilometers per hour. That will just get worse and worse in terms of gap. They end up in 6th. So not the best Russian duo either. That's Denisiev and Antonov, currently in 3rd. I think it's fair to say there's a lot of people waiting to see exactly what the Germans do here. What kind of shape have they turned up in? I mean, they never turn up in bad shape. The doubles luge has been very much dominated by the German pairings, except for when it came to the Olympics. Andreas and Wolfgang Linger, 2 Austrians that I haven't seen floating around here, who are now retired. The brothers pulled off back-to-back shock wins at the Olympics and became national heroes. And that second win certainly showed it wasn't just a flash in the pan. Though, to be fair, in the interim periods, the Germans were tending to dominate. Anyway, here we go. Oberstolz and Gruber. They've been European champions in the past. They are the elder statesmen of the luging fraternity. Combined age well over 70. They've been together a very long time. Their start, it's got weaker over the last few seasons. They're 1700s down. They can drive up a storm, but there's not enough ice here. 109.9, not even enough speed either. Where will they end up? 6th position, 0.27 behind. Well, I think a lot of that can be absolutely stuck down as a slow start. So Tartaglia's training magic hasn't worked on everybody in the Italian setup. And again, as you get older, you tend to lose just a bit of that zip at the top. And this is such an upper body heavy sport. The legs, of course, need to stay big and bulky just because you need the bulk to help you get down the hill. So they certainly do a lot of squatting in the gym, but really it's all about the upper back power, arm power, as you get the big stretch at the top and then paddle away as hard as you possibly can. Jacob Hearns and Anthony Espinosa of the USA.
Go, boys.
Not the best of the American duos. It's fair to say that Matt Mortensen and Jason Turderman are the #1 US duo, and they finished 3rd in the overall World Cup season last year. They're going to come down in about 5 or 6 sleds time. Hearns and Espinosa are improving with every slide they do. 132 behind at the moment. They were at actually 15th in the overall World Cup last season. Starting to sound a little bit more skittery, and oh goodness me, feet coming down on the ice out of 13, up the hill, 0.43 behind, and that's not so great, I'm afraid, for those guys. Well, they're still ahead of Obolongchuk and Zakharkiv, the Koreans, one pair of Czechs and a pair of Slovaks as well, so they're not down the bottom. But I guess if you're going to do a mistake anywhere that severe, it is through corner 14. Yes, it's very uphill after 14, but you've only got another 20 odd meters to fly up to the finish line. Szymilewski, Kowalewski, the Polish duo, who have absolutely breathed some new life into the Polish setup last season. An exciting duo with stacks of potential. They gun it off the start a little too hard, I'm afraid. And what was going to be a good start is now not such a good start. Right foot up there, waving it about, trying to get the good line out of 9 into 10. Oh, but they had to slap their feet in the ice. The ultimate anchor to slow you up. 110.6. I don't know quite how they've managed to keep that amount of speed doing those mistakes, but they are still punished. Down to 14th, 6/10 behind the leaders Ryder and Rassner of Italy. So we still have the 6 brothers to come, Walker and Smith, who are, well, have promised so much, and I feel like it's soon that they will deliver. Goiker and Gam, who took bronze medals here last year in the World Champs. Stoyan Koller, another big Austrian pairing, #1 American pairing, and then we have the #1 and 2 in the world to come down after that. And may I just say, Gruber and Keinswaldner have been disqualified. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of that later. Seven pairs to come. Andy and Uris, 6. 2 times Olympic medalists. And we'll talk about the brotherly ESP. These 2 guys obviously have it in abundance. Down they go, work their way around the corner. It's an awkward, difficult, tricky take on corner 5 there, where the doubles join the track. Feet almost together there by Andy 6 on top, and gives them good aerodynamics. They tend to drive up a storm, though the feet come down, the booties as they're known, onto the ice. 0.241, they seem to be just working the steering a little bit too much. 109's their speed. They're not going to trouble for the first, that's for sure. Down in 10th. And, wow. For these guys, it doesn't really matter what they do all season. They're still very much medal threats at the Olympics. Talk about knowing how to pull it out when it really matters. They are the experts. Nope, he was trying to just adjust his position by moving his feet around and getting the airflow over his body changing, but that just wasn't having any effect. So it's time to slap your feet on the ice.
Wir warten auf die Startfreigabe, damit ich es rausbringe. Dann sind wir gespannt. Wie schaut's aus? Startfrei jetzt.
Walker. Tristan Walker there at the front. Justin Smith behind. Canadian pair looking pretty psyched up. Let's hope they don't overcook this. It's a bit of an oxymoron. It's a relaxed explosion at the beginning. Hit it as hard as you can and then calm down, get in, and relax your way around that first corner. Yes! Tremendous start. And they're in the lead ahead of Ryder and Rastner, though already they've gone behind that split. We don't know how much by until the next one. 0.043 right now, that's not a lot. It's skittery sounding. Oh no, they're taking a hit before 10. And emergency measures when it comes to steering by Walker there, 95 kilometers per hour. Oh wow, 15 kilometers down on the others. And 18th and last, I'm afraid. I know we often have supporters of Walker and Smith tuning in. Sorry, folks, not such a good start to the season. Hopefully it gets better. Hit off the wall there. That's what happens sometimes when you take a little steer on a straight. It just started to bite those runners, and as much Smith could do about it. Frustrating to say the least, and they look rather casual about it, which is good. They obviously know what went wrong. Not too much frustration. Goiker and Gam next. Three German sleds in this race. There are only 5 sleds to come, 3 of which are German. We haven't seen a German pair yet. Let's see how these two get on, the youngest of the 3 pairs. So far, anyway, the least successful, but ooh, that wasn't so slick. And still loading round through corner 6. Well, right now, they're best part of a third of a second down. Oh, kicks off the wall there, Goiker. That is just going from bad to worse. Mistakes constantly here, and that kind of is what happens at this track. Those corners come at you so fast, you're off one and into the other before you know it. And if you're late out one, you just end up being late out of every corner. Down to 18th. Lucky for them, Walker and Smith had a bit of a shocker, and they've stayed ahead. They're not quite in last. Wow, look at that. Ouch. Ouch. Oh. The start was pretty much where most of the damage was done, and they couldn't quite keep their cool. Norbert Locke couldn't even watch, as they got it wrong here. Watch, there's a big kick off the wall in a second, is almost identical to what Smith and Walker did. Stoy and Koller. Our final Austrian pairing before we have the best 3 from last season. 4 sleds to go, and Stoy, see him grimacing there, trying to give it as much as he could off the top. Bit of a bump off the right-hand wall. Exiting 5. Seem to be on mark now through the Kreisel. 1/10 of a second down, that's the difference. That's what they're trying to claw back on Ryder and Rassner, who hit some extraordinary speeds down the bottom. 111 plus. 109.6, no, slower. So they're not going to catch them, and they slip to 0.26 behind them, which is very close to 5th and 4th, the Americans and the Latvians. It's all pretty tight. That bump there, ouch. Just took a bit off them. Not quite as much as others have had, but not the best slide. Goiker and Gam were really punished for that one. This start is so difficult. It's quite different in the men's start because they come perfectly onto the track as it was built. This double start and ladies start is very awkward indeed. You try and hit it off the top. You really have to get tucked down and in early. Now, Mortensen and Turnerman for the United States. Finished last season in 3rd overall. They never took a gold, but were consistently good, if not great. Lake Placid, they got a silver medal. Finished the season in Altenburg in the heart of Germany with a silver medal. So they know what it takes and are very consistent. Behind Ryder and Rassner currently. Coming into corner 8, we'll get a split with a reading. There we are, 0.198, almost 2/10 behind. Well, if they can hold this position, they'll be in 4th. 2 German sleds to go, but can they get high 110s in terms of speed? 109s? No, they can't. They're going to keep slipping. 6th, 7th, 8th. Oh, they've gone! Mortensen and Turnerman. They can hang on to the sled. They'll go over the finish line. They do. Just. They will be able to slide in the second run, if indeed they're fit. That's suddenly when you realize how steep the hill is. Those guys didn't grab it, they start sliding backwards very quickly. Now, 13, it was an exit of corner 12 actually. It was the left-hander in the middle of the labyrinth. They appeared to be just a little too late at getting onto it, and therefore just flipped off of it. Frustration is, and a bruised ego, I think, is all there is, luckily. But these 2 guys, I was just saying how consistent they were last season. They'll be disappointed, no doubt. Well, we have 2 teams to come in this doubles luge. Run number 1 here in Eagles. It's Tony Eggert, Sasha Benneken up first. Winners of the World Championships, winners of the World Cup last season. They took 9 golds out of 12. They looked an almost unstoppable force. Let's see how they've carried that momentum onto this Olympic season. Well, we can't read too much into the start. They look picture perfect round Kreisel. A little adjustment there by Eggert on top. Only 0.03 of a second in it. Ryder and Rassner, they're 39.967. They're the only pair to go under 40 seconds so far. 1:10.6. They're in the lead by 7,000ths of a second. Too close to call. The speed's too close to call. It's Eggert and Benneken who found a way yet again to go in to first place. And only Wendel and Alt can ruin their story at the halfway point in this World Cup. The last pair to come. Yeah. Olympic champions Wendel and Alt, also of Germany, will be our last sled. No, did they just steer around that wall? I think they did avoid a hit there. 9 to 10, that's casual. You see they're almost acting as shock absorbers. That's why they just appear to be fractionally floppy. It just suits, being relaxed suits gaining the highest speed. The world champion bib is the one they chose to wear. They could have worn the World Cup winners bib. But here is a pair who have won Olympic gold and dominated seasons as well. Are they somewhat past it? That's the big question everybody is asking. Eggert and Benneken, the new stars of Germany, seem to have the entire package, and Wendel and Alt just perhaps showing their age a little bit last season. Ooh, head up there as well by Wendel. Doesn't look entirely comfortable. So the start was only the 8th fastest start, 1:10.4. Speed is decent, but they're still hanging in there. There's only a matter of thousands between them and Eggert and Benneken. And still only 800ths in it as they slip behind Ryder and Rassler into third position. About 300ths ahead of Pence and Fischler, the best of the Austrians, down in fourth. Well, we're at the halfway point, and currently it's Eggert and Benneken who are the leaders. Sub 40 seconds, 39.934. The Italians closest to them, Ryder and Rassler, starting their Olympic season with a blindingly good performance. And Wendel and Alt, the season greats, are sitting in a solid position in third. There is but 700ths between first and third, and not much, 800ths to be exact, sorry, and only another few hundreds back to Pence and Fischler. The Russians, they're quite a distance away, so it looks like the top four are going to be battling it out now for those top three places in this first Luge World Cup of the season. That second run will be coming up in about half an hour's time live. As Oberstolz and Gruber down in ninth, the season campaigners solid as ever, maybe not quite as quick as they once were. Walker and Smith, oh, that'll hurt for them. Eagles Innsbruck, a glorious place to have any competition. Today it's the doubles luge, and so far at the halfway point, Eggert and Benneken, the top German pairing, certainly lived up to the billing. They were World Cup champions and world champions last season. This is how their run unfolded. Behind Ryder and Rassler, the Italians, who, like all of the Italian team, certainly looked very powerful. Almost jet propelled this season. Armin Zogler finally working his magic as head coach, but it's Norbert Locke who's still top dog as head coach, as Eggert and Benneken managed to slide their way up and on to first place by just 33,000ths of a second. So it's very much game on in the second run. There's about four teams who are fighting for the gold. Pence and Fischler, the Austrians, down in fourth, but they're not a million miles away and with their ability to slide, they could certainly get themselves up to the gold medal without a problem. There's not that big a gap at all. So all to play for in that second run. And if you're joining us, please come in at 1700 CET on Eurosport 2 to enjoy that second run with us. And thank you very much for watching, and we will catch you later on for this second run. And of course tomorrow we have the men's and the team relay, which is always a fabulous, exciting way to finish a luge weekend. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to Eagles near Innsbruck in Austria. And we have the second run of the doubles coming up in just a moment or two. Let's remind ourselves of what happened in the first run. Remember, it's the aggregate of the two runs put together that counts at the end. Lowest time wins. Well, the team of Tony Eggert and Sasha Beneken, absolutely tremendous, as they were last season, managing to come down in the lead. Well, Tobias Wendel and Tobias Alt, they sit in third position. That was who we saw first there. Ryder and Rastner, the Italians, currently in the silver medal position. And here are the Golden Boys from last season. They won the World Champs here in Innsbruck just 9 months ago. And they also won the overall World Cup with 9 gold medals out of 12. And looks like they're going to continue their form this season, though the gap is not quite as yawning as it once was. It's only 300s to the Italians and another 400 or 500s down to the other Germans. So all to play for still. Eggert and Beneken, there we are, 39.934. Ryder and Rastner, the Italians, the only other pair to make it under the 42nd mark. Wendel and Alt. Well, there were mistakes there and a start they could improve on. So you could see how they could come from third and win. And Pence and Fischler down in fourth. Well, they're just another 400s behind as well. And those guys, this is their home ice. They were wild in the first run and they still managed to finish fourth. They'll probably be wild in the second run. But who knows how good it'll be. I'm afraid Gruber and Kleinsvaldner have been disqualified. So 23 runners will be coming down the hill. Mortensen and Turdeman will kick them off in a moment or two. Obolongchik against Zakirkiv, with Zakirkiv even. And 3/10 is their advantage at the moment. Now let's see what they can hit off the hill. They were the second fastest starters, sorry, second slowest starters in the first run, and there's only been 8 men down, 8 pairs, so they are 8th. Yeah, so they are the slowest so far in the starts. The question is, how long will that lead hold on the Germans? 0.13. Oh, it's gone now for sure. This is recovery mode. Let's see if they can stay on the sled. They do. Quarter of a second down. Only 104 kilometers per hour. They could drop right down and do to 6th. Goika and Gam somehow managing to do a bit of a last stand here and take a number of scalps. If you're going to do badly, you might as well do badly and then have a great second run so you can sit in the winners' enclosure for a while. Have a bit of fun. As for these guys, that was not much fun at all. And the Ukrainians getting bitten by the track there, trying to do a little steering in the straight. Wrong choice. Hearns and Espinosa. 23.58 is the advantage. That's the advantage they have from the first run, which is a pretty chunky advantage to have. Solid enough start. And will they be able to hang on to such a massive lead over Goike and Gam? You'd think so. This track has not been very forgiving today. Bobbing about a wee bit there. Out of 10, that looked fairly relaxed. 109.4, 2,800 up. Yes. Oh, maybe not. I maybe spoke too soon. I think they're going to do it. At least I thought they were going to do it. Yes, they still do it. 0.18 up. And they went into a little bit of a slide there in 13. Hearns' face says it all. Just scraped through. Didn't lose too much. Exeter 10. Start drifting over towards the right part of the entrance into 10. But here we go, 12, 13. They just go on a little late and a little violently, and suddenly they're meant to be coming off and they're going sideways. But, pulled it off to their credit, and to their position too. They're in the lead. We've seen 9 teams go down. 1 team's been DQ'd. So 14 teams to come in this second leg of the doubles. Solkanski and Stuchlak. The Slovakians do not carry much of an advantage over the Americans. It may well evaporate at the start. The Americans being somewhat better starters than them. Let's have a look. 2, 3, 4 paddles they give it. Ooh, if they didn't bump the wall there, then they've done really pretty well, actually. We'll soon see. They must have done. And they rolled the dice anyway. Now, from 0.11 behind, 8 into 9 changeover. Can they work a little magic? They were turning corner 9 into a definite 2-pressure corner there. They came off very early and got pulled back up again. 0.23, 110.1 kilometers per hour is very solid speed. So they won't pull it back. How far will they drop? To 4th position. Exeter 9, late, flopped a bit, and well, it wasn't exactly a great changeover, 9 to 10. It's very much, I would suggest, the hardest corner to corner to get right on the track, because not so much getting it right as it can go very, very wrong very quickly if you hit 10 in the wrong position. Andy 6, Euro 6, boys from Latvia. Let's see what they can do off the start. Very smooth bit of piloting there by Andy. They hang on to their lead over the Americans, which is about 600ths of a second. It still is about 600ths of a second. 9-10 changeover. Smooth enough. Almost a 1/10 of a second up. 110.3. Just about the best speed we've seen in this second run. And they'll hang on to that lead and extend it by over 1/4 of a second. Bravo, the Six Brothers. Maybe not bravo by their standards, down in 13th and leading at the moment with 12 sleds to come, but having laid down a pretty impressive track there, I think they may well bring themselves up from 13th into the top 10. You could see that run and that time taking some scalps. Well, the current fastest time in the second run, Walker and Smith fans will be happy to hear that they're still comfortably the fastest second run. If they hadn't had such a shocker in the first one, who knows what could have happened today. The next pairing, Andrei Bogdanov in front, Andrei Medvedev behind. Two of the men who qualified through the Nations Cup to get here. Their start, by their standards, pretty weak in the first off the hill. Then they just gain time all the way down. Now, how much have they improved on their start? Yes, by about 300ths of a second. And that will have a positive impact on the momentum through the first few corners as well. And yes, they are 0.121 up, over 1/10 of a second. Exit of 9. Little flop, but it doesn't matter. They're nice and straight into the labyrinth. Perfect off of 10, 109.9. Speed's not something to write home about, but they do not hang on. My goodness. The Russians are beaten by the Latvians. Dare I say it, they were just perhaps a touch too conservative, trying to get that perfect line. And sometimes the perfect line just has to be forgotten, because if you're not quite on it, you're steering to get on it. And that's slowing you down. Hard to falter really, on nice and early to 13. Working on the steering all the time to keep on line. And thus, they go behind. The Six Brothers that therefore lead. We've had 12 sleds go down. Andy on the left, Juris on the right. The Broz brothers, Lucas in front, Antonin behind. 400ths of a second is their advantage. Every single pair will have an advantage of some variety as we go through this order, this final run for the doubles. They're ahead of the Six Brothers still. The next split will tell us a huge amount about whether the start was successful or not. No is the answer. 7 thousandths of a second down. And nice slick exit out of 9 into 10. Can they let this sled fly a bit? 600ths down, that's all they are. Don't think they have it in them just to relax entirely and let this go. And they finish 7th fastest second run into 3rd position at the moment. Vladislav Yushikov and Yuri Prokhorov will be our next pair down the hill. Poor starters, but able to drive themselves up into contention. Certainly of top 8, maybe top 6. There's only about 600 or 700 between our next pairing coming up, as we look at the Broz brothers once again. Well, there's a lot of people down in that finish house, the Zeal house. There's barely room to move down there. But that's certainly the best place to be if you want to look at all the big screens and the coaches want to chat to their men as they come in. Now, Yusukov, Prokhorov. What can they start off in? 42.4. It's actually a 2.078. That's a very good start indeed. So they should be hanging on to that lead for a while. 58.766. Our next split with the Six Brothers into corner 8. And 0.065 is the difference. So over 600s to play with still. Let's see if their top end speed is anywhere near what the 6 did. No, it's a little slower. There's only under 300ths of a second difference. This will be very tight on the line, and they've gone behind by 0.025, just over 200ths of a second. And if it had been 10 meters shorter, I think they would be in the lead right now. So we see down in the lower labyrinth. So quite a speed to be traveling at. And you're flipped from almost 90 degrees to 90 degrees. Rapid succession down those 3 corners. And then you've got the G-force of corner 14 to look forward to. And that's a good 5G, like 5 times your own body weight, which is, if you think about it, is a pretty crushing experience. There's not a lot of breathing going on during that final corner, I can tell you. Now then, back to the top, and Oberstolz and Gruber. I think the term journeyman would be a big insult to these guys, but they have done the journey, been there, bought the t-shirt a few times. They've been around the World Cup circuit a decade and a half, and perhaps have seen better days in terms of out-and-out power at the start. Still, they can drive up a storm. Currently in 9th position. They had a poor first start. They are just 0.089 up on the Six Brothers right now. And they did have about 900ths. They've lost about 300ths of a second. Six Brothers were doing over 110 kilometers per hour there. They're in the lead, but will they be in a moment or two? Yes, they are. 5 thousandths of a second. And Oberstolz and Gruber get the pleasure of leading the race for a while anyway. Well, a good solid start, as their experience would suggest they would do. They were never the world's best starters. They've just lost a tiny edge. And now they're, instead of inside the top 10 in starts, more like 18 to 24 on race day. Somewhere around there, the bottom few. Unless it's a long track for these guys, it is hard for them to pull it back and take medals. Last season, though, consistency was outstanding by Oberstolz and Gruber. They were actually never outside the top 8-9 positions. But in the same breath, they finished as high as 4th, never got on the podium. And that was only once. So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th was their regular position as Stoy and Koller head down the hill. Thomas Stoy in front. These guys can spank off a pretty quick start. Hold an interesting line round Kreisel. Point to 0.43. Ahead of Oberstolz and Gruber, but that's messy. Can they bring it back online? Yes, they do. For corner 10. Well done, fellas. Goodness, 109.1 though. The speed, not as quick, I'm afraid. So they have the lead. It's a tiny margin. They've lost it. 0.022. Oberstolz and Gruber now guaranteed top 8 position. We have 7 duos still to slide. A little bit bobbly at the start. And again, nobody's done a truly beautiful start, have they? It's an awkward one. We'll see some better looking starts tomorrow in the men's race. Different start house further up the hill. A bit more straight onto the track. Round through 14. Legs were starting to fly about a bit. Obviously not feeling entirely in control there. Off goes Steuenkoller, back up the top with Justin Krusen and Andy Shirk of the USA. .039. That's a pretty tasty start. Best start in the first run was done by Penson Fischler, 2.015. As we know, they've maybe pushed it a little too hard off the start. Krusen and Shirk have gone behind Oberstolz and Gruber, who will be loving this. The 108.8, they're certainly not going to put it back either. They're nearly crashing through 13 into 14. And that was lifesaver stuff there from the pilot. Justin Krusen in front. He had no option but to stick the feet down on the ice there to avoid any kind of crashing. That was slick. 9 into 10. Hard to fault that. Next of 10 down into 11. And the 12-13 changeover right here. Hey! Just started to almost did a little shifting movement with his pelvis there, and it just sent him off. Looked like he'd got the exit right. So the seasoned veterans, Oberstolz and Gruber, enjoy a little more airtime in the winner's enclosure, as they've now pulled themselves up to at worst 7th position, as Putins and Marcin Kavics behind him for Latvia take their turn. They are in 6th position. 6th position. .042. 6th fastest start we've seen so far, so it keeps them in the mix. Through 8 into 9, on to 10. That's straight with almost a little negative G-pop as they come up and over that brow of the hill into 10. Oh, 109.4. The speed's not good enough to hang on to this. They go behind on the final couple of corners, and they slot down into 6th in the end. Such is the tightness of the top athletes. Putin's all the way up to 1st. 6 places split by 0.04 of a second. Wow. That looks solid there. Even keeping his head back. And down through the labyrinth. Yeah, just coming off perhaps a little late there, but not late enough to crash, just late enough for it to throw you over to the right-hand side a bit. There's a classic height difference between a pilot, the man in front, and the number 2 behind, who's not a lot smaller. Alexander Denisiev, Vladislav Antonov of Russia. They've got a lead on our current leaders, Oberstolz and Gruber, from the first run. And that is exactly 5/600ths of a second, something like that. As they hit this off the hill, 2.047. It's not crazy fast. Denisiev and Antonov sometimes can mix it with the best up near the track record, start record times, but they're still a 1/10 of a second up over Oberstolz and Gruber. Oh, just avoid the wall there as they steer themselves back up and on to 10. The speed here is key. 1:10.1's good enough to hang on. They are 0.127 up at checkpoint, penultimate checkpoint, and they lose 6/100ths of that, but take over the lead as Russia goes into first ahead of Italy. Latvia is in 3rd position, and by them losing so much time in the end there, they've suddenly kept this clump of teams very close together. It's about 8/100ths of a second from 7th to 1st. Very close indeed. There'll be guys down in 7th like Putins and Marcinkiewicz who will be thinking, wow, if we just done a little bit more at the start, a few thousandths of a second there, a couple of steers better, get a few hundreds there, then right now they would be up in first. So it's big Denisiev who's cheering to the cameras. He's the main man at the moment. Him and his partner Antonov. There are 4 sleds to come. The seasoned face of Georg Fischler behind, and there's big Peter Pence, who is the pilot of this duo. 0.136. This is absolutely the money end now. There are 4 teams left, and this team, as are the next 3 teams, are so close you could see any of the 4 winning this contest. Oh no! I said they like to go wild, and they have gone wild on their home track. Too wild, I'm afraid. That didn't look pretty. And how much does it cost them? Denisiev and Antonov, they only have 26/1000ths of a second advantage over them. But it's not about the 1300ths advantage they did have over them. It was really them trying to lay down a massive run. Look at that, 112 kilometers per hour. They still managed to pull out the fastest speed of anybody. And what they lose in the start from wildness, they wildly reel back in again at the end. Gosh, if everyone slid like these two, it would be perhaps even more exciting because they're always on the edge of crashing. Indeed, they did crash at the last Olympics. They rolled the dice with the best of them, but that was just a bit ugly.
Also eines kann man wirklich sagen, der Schlitten läuft wirklich wie Sau, wenn ich das so sagen darf. Der Willi Willmann hat über die Sorge geflüchtet, aber das kann man hier wirklich festhalten.
Heartbreaking for them at the Olympics in Sochi. They were doing so well, and then, well, one crash and it's all over. Almost coming down on the ice again there as well in 13, but 112 kilometers per hour is all you need to say. The fastest by a kilometer per hour or more actually in the second run, maybe 1.8 kilometers per hour. Extraordinary. So 3 pairs to come. The Tobys from the Munich area, Bavarian boys. Let's see what they can produce. A bit of their old magic. Or are they just officially Germany #2, and there's not much they can do about it? 2.047, 8th fastest start we've seen so far. Well, they don't have to worry so much about Pence and Fischler now, because Pence and Fischler's second run was not brilliant. They can cement their bronze here. Oh, maybe they won't. As they tap off the wall, feet down on the ice. Their speed 111.1. It was great speed, but we've seen Pence and Fischler quite a bit quicker. Could they lose another 10th as they head towards the finish line? No, they do not. They managed to stabilize the ship and get over the line in the lead. And we therefore say goodbye to Oberstolz and Gruber from the winners' enclosure. The Italians off for a shower as Denisiev and Antonov just cling on to third at the moment. Pence and Fischler in second. Currently the gold medalists are Wendel and Alt. But we have Ryder and Rasta, the Italians, who I think it's fair to say are not as consistent, nowhere near as consistent as Eggert and Benneken, who will come down last, who are almost bet your house on that they will finish this off and win. But Wendel and Alt are guaranteed the bronze now. So it's no shame, the start of this year. Medal guaranteed, which they didn't always do last season. They lost their consistency somewhere along the line. Now, Ryder and Rasta. Could they pull off a famous victory here in Eagles, surrounded by two of the best German pairs in history? Carry a pretty slender advantage over Wendel and Alt. A very slender advantage. We're talking thousandths of a second. It's right now been up to 86 thousandths of a second, though, and that's suddenly pretty chunky. 111 was the speed of Wendel and Alt as they exit 10 into 11. 110.5, not quite as quick, but it's nearly 1700s in hand. That should be enough to hang on and take the lead ahead of the Germans. Quarter of a second nearly. They extend it. Ryder and Rasta of Italy, what a start to the Olympic season. Almost a quarter of a second up on the great Wendel and Alt, Olympic champions. Pence and Fischler now are on a knife's edge. They're in the bronze medal position on home ice, but the guys who will axe them from the podium are Eggert and Benneken. Tony Eggert, Sasha Benneken, last year's World Cup champions and world champions, about to slide. Brilliant slide by Ryder and Rasta. Well done, Armin Zogler, for getting your Italian team in terrific shape. Starting the season with a bang. That's how to get your team on a roll as well. A feeling like they can win is exactly what you need at the beginning of the Olympic season. Boy, do these two know how to win, though. They were hoovering up just about every gold medal last season, including the overall World Cup and World Championship title. Bit rocking and rolling there. 11th fastest start. Wasn't the prettiest. Is it possible? Could this go red at the next split? They weren't as quick as Ryder and Rasta there, but they carried forward an advantage of 300ths of a second. Have they lost that? They're starting to speed up, though. It's looking slick now from 9 into 10. And they're still hanging on to the lead. They've extended it to 1100ths. 110.6. Unless they crash, they're going to win this race. They do. 0.17 of a second. A 39.90 lays down the law. That's the fastest run we've seen of anybody in the entire day. And when most crews were going a 10th to 1500ths slower in the second run, they've gone quicker. So that's them just fighting with themselves now to see how good they can be. Feel like they're on another plane, these two, at the moment. That may well change through the season, you never know. people go off the boil, but they didn't last season. They were tremendous all the way through. And into the final corner. There they could have just closed their eyes, happily flipped and crashed and still won it. And the advantage was good enough. And bodes well for the German Olympic season. Very well. 3 medals in the women's earlier, and now 2 medals here. Just the Italians getting a taste of a medal in day 1. So Egerton Benneken the gold, Ryder and Rassner of Italy, the silver, Vendelenalt, the bronze with Pence, and Fischler, perhaps my favourite sliders, wildly sliding to 4th place on their home ice. Shame for them. A couple of big names down the bottom there, Walker and Smith, Mortensen and Turdyman, that'll hurt